Books, Kids, and Creations, a part of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I'm your host, Tracy Bloom, and I feature people who inspire future generations with their gifts and all of the things that they do. And I have a phenomenal author on with us today, Christy Wilhelmi, and you are from California. And not only are you an author of 4 incredible books, but you are also a gardener and the host of the Garden Nerd website. So Christy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So you have quite a number of books under your belt. So all of them focus on gardening, sustainability, how to be more self-sufficient. Before we jump into your latest book called High Yield Small Space Organic Gardening, why don't you talk about how you got started? Because even just like the amount of facts and information in this book, I thought, oh my gosh, how would one person be able to tackle all this? There's so much knowledge in here. So how did you get started, and what's your training like?
Sure. I think it goes well. I have to go back to as a kid, I was a picky eater, and the only thing I would eat, as far as vegetables go, were the raw carrots and raw peas that would come straight out of the garden. If they were cooked, I wouldn't touch them, right? And so that really led the way. And we had a small patch of vegetables when I was a kid in our backyard. But then I really didn't focus on it at all until I became an adult. And when I was 23, I became a vegetarian. And the more I learned about our food system and, what everything goes into it, and whether we want it to be there or not, I just wanted to take a little bit more control over my food and started learning about gardening. And I started on a balcony, and then I got a patio. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, I got a community garden plot. And relatively speaking, my community garden plot is big. It's 15 feet by 15 feet, which for some gardens, you get a 4x8 raised bed or something smaller. So it's kind of nice to have that space. But I really was interested in learning as much as I could about growing a lot of stuff in a small space. And so that led me to down the rabbit hole of all the different biointensive methods that I talk about in the book. And I just was like a sponge. I wanted to know everything. And the cool thing about gardening is that you can never learn everything. It's a learning process, and failure is a big part of it, which was sort of a life lesson for me because I was a perfectionist and needed to do everything right the first time. And so with gardening, you're sort of forced to fail and learn from it. And it's just kind of okay. Everybody does it that way, and that's okay. So I think that led the way. And as far as like where the knowledge came from, I'm pretty much self-taught. I studied with John Jevons of Grow Biointensive and Dr. Elaine Ingham of the Soil Food Web. But I've been taking classes from folks as I got more and more into gardening and wanted to learn more about composting and growing food and et cetera. And but I didn't go to horticulture school. I'm not a master gardener, but I've taught the master gardeners. So it just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah, and something I love about your book is that uh, you have so wonderfully broken your book down into segments. And so you can learn about how to garden for very small spaces. You say that you fed, your family with a very small space of land, and you provided almost 70 to 80% of all of your vegetables and things for your family with your gardening. And I love how you've broken it down into really digestible sections. And one of those I thought was really neat was how you have all of the different um, plans in here. And but
Yeah,
you have
sure.
plans in here, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've like scoured the internet for plans for how to organize my raised beds. And I, I was just wondering, like, how long did this process take you to put together? Have you always just kind of recorded your fails and your wins and everything you did?
Yeah, I have journals, my garden journal with every single layout I've done in my gardens dating back to 1997. So
Nice.
it goes way back, and it's something that I refer to when planning out the next season, and that's something that became part of my teaching method, which was to keep at least 3 years of your records. You have disease issues or pest issues, it's a good idea to rotate to a different area. And because of the way my brain works, I'm the daughter of an engineer and a nurse, and so we're really kind of orderly, I should say, and organized. And so I broke the book down into what made sense to me, and like, this needs to happen first, then this, then this, then this. And so, yes, you can jump around in the book, but you can also just read it straight through, step by
Right.
step, and walk through as you know, work as you go. So I liked the way I was able to boil things down into succinct methods. And I don't know if I answered your question though about like, how do you plan? You know, it's all in there about the little bits of information that you learn along the way help guide you in what to plant where. And I know that there's a lot of information out there and it's easy to get overwhelmed. So I really like to simplify things, because if you look at, for example, companion planting, which everyone wants to get into companion planting, and it's honestly, some guy made it up a long time ago, and not a lot of it has scientific backup. And so I mostly eschew that, just like, forget about it. Don't think about that. Just think about your plant families, you know, because you know, we
Yeah.
have our nuclear families, our moms and dads and kids and whatnot. And there are plants that work in the same way. So you've got your Brassicaceae family, which is all your broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, and kale. And then you've got your Solanaceae family, which is your tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and potatoes, and so on and so on. So if you just keep those things together
Yeah.
and rotate those to different beds, you're in good shape. Pretty much
Yeah.
that's all you need to think about. So I like to boil it down to that.
Well, and I read that page in the book about the families, and I went, "Oh, did I do that?" And I ran out to my yard and I looked at my boxes and I went, "I did do that. I did
Yeah.
plant, like my carrots with my broccoli and my onions in one box." I went, "Okay, I guess I kind of know what I'm doing a little bit." But
Yeah.
and some of the things in your book too, I was like, "Wow, I guess I never thought about that with just like arranging from tallest to shortest and then based on sunlight." I was like, well, duh, but like just things that I've never thought about before. I just you lay it out so well. What are some things that you think any person, no matter where they live, will be able to get from your book?
Well, I think my hope is that they will get the motivation to try growing at least one thing, whether
Yeah.
it's herbs in a pot on the windowsill or outside in the sun on a patio, or or trying something new that they haven't grown before. Because I'm a big fan of experimenting with new varieties and or heirloom varieties you've never grown before. That is the spice of life as far as I'm concerned. You know, I grow purple everything if I can. You know, if there's a purple carrot available, I'm growing it. I've got purple artichokes I was just harvesting from recently, purple
Is there
potted
a reason
peas.
for it? Or just because you like the color?
I
Or
love purple, but there's
yeah, yeah,
also anthocyanins, right? They're the things that you find in blueberries. They're healthier. But in general, I just like to speckle color throughout the garden. So for a fun and pretty garden, because most people want aesthetic
yeah.
beauty along with their vegetables. I mean, my methods are very efficient and economical over appearance. But if you're like growing chard that has pink stems and yellow stems, that's going to brighten up your garden and make it interesting. So it's fun.
And then there's so many really, really nice pictures in your book too. I was wondering, did you take the photographs or did you work with an photographer to pair up actual really nice pictures?
Yeah, a lot of the photos are mine, and I take every photo that goes on my blog so that I don't get snagged by Getty Images or any other, company
Yeah,
with a copyright. Because it
great.
happened like early on, it happened where my webmaster grabbed a photo off the internet and I got snagged for it. And so I make sure I
Oh,
take all of my pictures. But the
Mhm.
company that published the book, Fox Chapel, they also wanted to add some stock images too. So there are some stock photos, but most of the vegetable photos are mine.
Yeah. Well, I know that I learned a ton from your book, and I've only been gardening for maybe like 3 years, and I too keep a journal that says like seeds planted this date, first sprout this date,
Yes.
transplanted this date. And it's really, I feel like even just as a newbie, I learned so much from your book, and it was not overwhelming at all. And if I wanted to learn about just potatoes, there's a page for that. Like if I want to learn about just tomatoes, there's a page for that. Like you did such a good job, and I think that anybody anywhere could pick this up and easily make either a small garden that's plentiful or a big garden that's plentiful. So, yeah, well done.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm happy that you said that you keep track of things when you write down on your journal, like where it's planted. I go one step further, and I think I mentioned this in the book about, we all use digital calendars these days. And so,
Right.
like today, this morning, I went to the garden and I planted some basil and some arugula and some cilantro and a bunch of other stuff. And I take the seed packets and I lay them out in order of days to germination, which is the period of time it takes for the seed
Oh,
to sprout. And so, it says 5 to 10 days or 10 to 14 days, whatever. And I lay those out by the last date. So by 10, 14, 21, etc. And then I go into my calendar on Google and type in today I planted this, and this, and then count how many days forward and write that seed should be sprouted on that day, so that when it pops up, because I'm not going to remember,
right.
when that reminder pops up, I can go check. And if they aren't sprouted, I can plant the seeds again. And that's something for seed growers, for people growing from seed and not from nursery stock. That's really important, because you'll wait that extra week or extra 2 weeks to what, like, oh, maybe they're going to come up. No, 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 no. Just plant more seeds if you don't see them, because you're going to get more out of that garden the faster you replant.
Yeah. And what's one of the most shocking things that you've found while in all the time of your gardening experiences? Like what's something where you're like, wow, that's surprising, or I didn't know that, or I want to share this with other people.
I think when, early on in my gardening life, I didn't know anything about the soil food web, which is the microbial life that's in our soil. And, we think about all the stuff we can see in our ecosystem around us, but there's a whole ecosystem underground. And when I started diving into that, that just, blew my mind. And it made such a difference in how my stuff grew. My garden would grow so much better if I, instead of feeding the plant, fed the soil. And that was just mind blowing and life changing for me.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see the little image behind me is the cover for
Bugs.
it's a bug book. I wrote this this book is going to be published in 3 weeks.
Oh,
And
exciting.
it's all about bugs, but more so about like how there's good bugs and there's bugs that have jobs to do out there in the garden. And
Yes.
that was one thing that I was shocked about just from researching bugs in gardens and why they're there and what's drawn them to certain plants. Um, do you have like certain bugs that you're like, okay, if I see this bug, I'm gonna do this to make sure it's either leaving or going to another plant?
Well, I have, I think the biggest problem here where I live is aphids in general, because if it gets hot, the aphids show up. And so we're always trying to keep aphids at bay.
Oh, good.
And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I do is I put down worm castings, because
Oh,
I know this is crazy, huh? Here we
yeah.
go. Nerd alert. So worm castings are created by worms. They don't have teeth. They have enzymatic mouth parts. So they digest their food with enzymes. And that enzyme comes through to the castings, which is a nice way of saying worm poop. And
Right.
the castings have this enzyme, which is called chitinase. And chitinase happens to dissolve the exoskeletons of soft bodied insects. So
Oh,
I know.
okay.
Right? So when I
Yeah.
see a plant that is suffering, if it's covered in aphids, I mean, okay, that plant is weak and it needs some help. So I put worm castings around the base of the plant, scratch it in, water it in. The plant will take up the nutrients in worm castings, which are great, but it also takes up the enzyme, that chitinase. And then when it's coming out into its leaves and stems, when sucking insects are feeding on that plant, they take in the chitinase and then it starts to break them up. Basically, they're like, why am I falling apart? And they go, or they leave. So I put down at my first line of defense is worm castings, and it feeds the plant and helps ward off pests. And it's something that, you know, it's the science part that made help me learn about that. And you can see all kinds of studies around I think insect frass and other bugs, right? So
Yeah.
and that helps everything grow big and strong. So when I see aphids, that's the first thing I do.
Yeah. And I just I feel like I could talk to you all day about garden stuff, but we gotta keep it condensed. If you had to pick like your very favorite part of the book, do you have a favorite part of your book? Or
Good question. I you know so many options. Okay, I'll just say the recipes in the back are
okay.
fun because
Hmm.
that's you don't see that usually in gardening books, but
You
I
don't.
know for a lot of people who are just getting started, they're like, great, I grew this thing. Now what?
Right. Right.
So I've got recipes in there that are sort of basics, things you could use across a profile of vegetables. How to cook kohlrabi and broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower are the same, in the same way, or how to make a kale chips, right? Kale chips are
Right.
awesome. Roasted
Yeah.
radishes. So kids love growing radishes, but they don't taste all that great. So
Right.
there's a recipe in there for roasted radishes with toasted sesame oil and soy sauce, and they're so good they transform into something else completely when you cook them. So
Yeah.
I'll say that's my favorite part.
You know what? I would agree. Well, I wouldn't agree. I think the whole book is great, but I love that you have recipes in there because all too often I think people get excited about growing and then they're like, "Oh, wow, I have 5 peppers now
All
and I have
right.
to like maybe figure out what to do with this or I have plentiful potatoes or I have all of these, things." And then you're like, "What do I do with all this?" Because you can't like, can it all or feed. I mean, I guess you could feed lots of people, but yeah, I like that you have ideas for how to cook them
Yeah.
and
It's
enjoy them.
it's we're the food waste is one of our biggest problems. 40% of the food we bring into our house ends up in the landfill. So we, compost for sure, and then use it up, preserve it, freeze it, whatever, eat it.
Yeah. And so do you can also?
I have both water bath canning and pressure canning equipment, and I will like I just cooked some artichokes in my pressure cooker. That's another
Mhm.
thing. So instead of 45 minutes of cooking artichokes, it's forever. You can cook them in about 10 minutes on a pressure cooker.
Nice.
So,
Very nice.
but yeah, I mostly freeze. I will cut stuff up, and like I grew a lot of peas, shelled them, froze them so they're available for use later in the season. I grew a celeriac and chop that up and freeze it in cubes for my
Oh, okay.
celery. That's my celery option. Instead of celery, I
Ah,
use celeriac because it gives you the flavor, but it doesn't have. There's a thing called FODMAPs. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
mm,
it's a low FODMAP option. So
okay.
yeah, and I preserve, like I make pesto. So rather than, how
Mm,
basil goes bad really quickly and it turns black in the fridge, and so
yeah.
I will gather 6 cups of basil leaves and turn it into pesto and then freeze those jars to pull out all winter long while there's no basil growing. So
Yes, I do that once. I usually do that once a year. I call it Pesto Palooza at my house,
yeah.
and I have like my pesto session where I'm making pesto and then freezing it, and it's great to just,
It's
midwinter be like, "Ooh, I have this. I
yeah,
have this
and
pesto."
summer flavors in the middle of winter. It's the best.
Yeah. Same with tea leaves too. We kind of took some lavender and some sage and mint and ground it up and made our little minty tea.
Ooh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So do you
We
dehydrate?
we do.
Okay.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a
And I know,
solar, I just wanted to mention that there is a solar dehydrator construction project in the book. So
okay,
it's
okay.
something that we use around here. I use it to dehydrate things like when I grew leeks and shallots, I would dehydrate those and I'll make flax chips on it overnight, not overnight, but
Hmm.
it's really, yeah. So anyway, that's a fun project. It involves a
Yeah.
saw, and so adults, but
It's adult
yeah.
project, but maybe kids can help a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're busy all the time. Like on your website, you have events and you're always doing community garden events and you're doing author talks and things like that. Do you have any things coming up that you'd like people to know about or to be on the lookout for?
If you go to gardenerd.com has a link to my personal website, which is christywilhelmi.com. And on there, I list my upcoming events where I'm speaking. I know that I'm going to be doing the keynote speaking speech at the Culver City Garden Club's annual garden show, which is always fun.
Fun.
And I've got a bunch of other stuff coming up and I can't remember any of it right now, unfortunately, but that's all on my website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I loved your book. We're going to post links to where everyone can go pick it up. And I know I'm going to be getting your fruit book too, because that's like a big goal for me is to grow fruit. So,
Oh yeah, and and that one is all about growing fruit in small spaces too. So we can talk about that when you get it later.
yeah. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time.
Thank you so much.